Hi everyone, welcome to our next session of the verbal prepathon that we have every week. And for the past few weeks, we've been focusing on critical reasoning, and that's what we're going to do this week as well. In the previous two sessions, we looked at weaken the argument questions. We looked at the evil twin of weaken the argument questions, which is flaw in the argument questions. And today we are taking the next step where we are going to be strengthening the argument. So a lot of people tend to feel that strengthen the argument questions are actually easier than weaken the argument questions. And I will admit I'm one of those people. I do feel that strengthen the argument questions are a tad bit simpler than weaken the argument questions, but the focus stays the same. And let's just look at it this way. If you feel strengthen the argument questions are easy and you feel weaken the argument questions are your problem area, it's just about identifying where it is that you seem to be having trouble, because what you're doing in strengthen the argument question, that's exactly what you have to do in weaken the argument question, just the flip side. Okay, so what I also want to point out is that a good 60% of the questions that you see on critical reasoning on the GMAT are assumption-based questions, which means it can be identify the assumption questions, it can be strengthen the argument, weaken the argument, evaluate the argument question. Being clear about these question types will make sure that you have at least 60% of the questions dealt with already. Okay, so today, let's focus on strengthening the argument questions. Before we start out, let me once again introduce myself. My name is Nitha, and I am the verbal head here at Crack Verbal. And what we like to do here at Crack Verbal is not talk theory. We prefer to fall back on logic, because the thing about the GMAT critical reasoning is that it's all about logic. As a matter of fact, the thing about the GMAT itself is it's all about logic, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today and all the sessions that we have. Our main focus for today is strengthen the argument questions. We do want to understand what is the strategy involved where strengthen the argument questions are concerned. I'm not going to talk of theory, but I am going to talk about what it is that we need to focus on as we look at a strengthen the argument question. We're going to read the question stem, and once we identify, hey, I'm going to have to strengthen this argument, what is the strategy we need to follow? And I'm going to preferably do that by falling back on it. Okay, we're going to do that, understand what the strategy is all about. We are also going to be looking at a few official questions where we are expected to strengthen the argument. We're going to do it under the pressure of time, which means I am going to give you 2 minutes to solve the question. And the whole idea is to take those 2 minutes to solve the question. And we're also, like we spoke about in the earlier session, what we're going to try and do is, of the 5 options that we have, we're going to try our best to get rid of at least 3 options and then focus all our attention on the remaining 2 options. Okay, that's what we're going to do. And as we do this, as we always do in our sessions, we are going to try and focus on what are the patterns, what are the traps that you normally tend to see. The sooner we can recognize what these traps are and what these typical patterns are and add it to our database, the sooner we can eliminate options, the sooner we can get to solve the answer. Okay? So no matter what question you're solving on critical reasoning, no matter what question you're solving on the GMAT in general, your aim as you solve is to make sure that you're doing the analysis required so that you can identify these patterns and these traps, and you can use this learning in the similar questions that follow. Okay. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's once again, as we have done for the previous 2 sessions, fall back on the same scenario that we discussed in the earlier 2 sessions, weaken and in flaw in the argument. Those of you who missed the sessions, who were not able to attend the live sessions we had for weaken the argument, flaw in the argument, the links for both these sessions are given in the description box. Please go ahead and watch these sessions so that you can understand the logic behind these question types and how it is that you can simplify the entire question. Okay, so please go ahead and have a look at that. But right now, we're going to fall back on the same scenario that we've spoken about the earlier 2 sessions. Don't worry, I'm going to introduce the scenario to you once again, especially if you've missed the earlier sessions. I want you to imagine a situation. All right. Now let's imagine you have a really good friend called Tom. And one night, you're chilling out, you finished your work for the day, and maybe you're watching a show on your phone, maybe, and you get and the phone rings, and you get news, the awful news that your friend Tom has been shot dead. All right, somebody comes and tells you, hey, this Tom, this friend of ours, he's been shot dead. And we get some more information that the murder weapon was a gun and that this gun belonged to somebody called Sam. You know Sam as well. You know Tom, you know Sam as well. You know Sam because Sam is Tom's business partner. You know him. And what you get to know is that it is Sam's gun that was used to murder Tom. And based on this piece of information, the police have concluded that Sam has murdered. All right. This is the situation that you're faced with. Let's imagine that you're a lawyer. Just for the sake of for argument, let's imagine you're a lawyer, and now you want to show that you're really you've been hired by the family, and you want to prove, of course, you're Sam's family's lawyer, so you want to prove that yes, whatever it is that the police have concluded, it is absolutely correct that Sam has murdered. Now, you may not be able to prove it 100%. The only way to prove it is if you actually had footage of Sam actually murdering Tom, but you want to show that what has been concluded is most probably true. I want to convince the judge that what has been concluded is probably true. What are the points, if you were in a court of law, what are the points you would probably put forward to show that, hey, in all probability, Sam has murdered Tom? Yes, you have this gun and all that stuff, but I want to come up with some more points to show that Sam has murdered Tom. Let's see. One thing that I would definitely say is that, Sam's gun, he usually stores it in a locker, and the only person who is able to open the locker is Sam. So I know that possibility always is there. Just because the gun belongs to Sam doesn't necessarily mean that Sam has murdered Tom. But if I put forward this piece of assumption, let's just say this is a piece of information that I'm going to present, that this gun is stored in a locker and only Sam can open it. This piece of information tells me, hey, that is the case. If the only person who has access to this gun is Sam, then maybe Sam has murdered Tom after all. So as a lawyer, I have been able to strengthen the argument that Sam has murdered. All right, this one information helps me do that. Let me see, is there anything else I can say? I can even say, hey, Sam has no alibi. There is nothing that when we asked him, where were you at the time that Tom was shot dead? He has no alibi. He says, hey, I was by myself. There is no reason for us to believe that. So there is no one to prove that he has not shot Tom dead. So the fact that Tom has no alibi, he has nothing to prove that he has not done this, also helps me show that, hey, most probably Sam might have murdered Tom after. What about one more? If I can come up with one more, I could say, hey, look, we did the mobile tracking and we checked where Sam was at the time that Tom was shot dead. And the mobile tracking showed us that Sam was in the same area where Tom was found dead. This doesn't necessarily prove that Sam murdered Tom, but this has gone and strengthened the scenario. This now will make the judge or the jury feel, hey, wait a minute, what was Sam doing? In that particular area where Tom was shot dead. The probability is, hey, maybe in that case, maybe Sam has murdered Tom after. All of these points have helped us strengthen the argument. When I say the word argument, this is something we have to keep in mind. The word argument in such a scenario, weaken the argument, strengthen the argument, evaluate the argument. The word argument in this particular scenario pretty much means conclusion. When you're being asked to strengthen an argument, you are being asked to show that whatever has been concluded is probably true. All right. So all these points that we just have helps us show that whatever has been concluded is probably true. That's exactly what you need to do in a strengthen the argument question. You're going to be presented with an argument in this manner. There's going to be one conclusion that has been drawn. Your singular focus is this conclusion, because you have to look at the options presented to you. You always will be given 5 options for GMAT. You in the GMAT verbal section, you have to look at each option that has been presented to you and say, hey, which one of these options helps us show that what has been concluded is probably true. There are various traps that you'll come across. There are various patterns you will come across. As we practice, as we analyze, we're going to gather these traps in. But no matter what the question type, as I always say, there are 3 points that will help you get to the correct answer. Number one, always is simplify the information given to you. Sometimes the argument presented can be extremely verbose. There can be a lot of data given to you. You want to simplify it as much as possible. Go ahead and use a scratch pad. The GMAT will always give you a reusable scratch pad if you feel that, hey, writing down the points, or just don't have to write down sentences, just noting down points about your argument could sometimes help. Either way, whether you're writing it down or not, simplify the information given to you. You want to break through all the complex sentence construction and simplify the information. Definitely focus on what you're expected to do. In the end, what is the question stem asking you to do? If you're expected to strengthen the argument, every option that you look at, you're very clear that I'm going to be strengthening what has been concluded. Look at this option, ask yourself, hey, is this strengthening the argument? If it's not, that's not your answer. Maybe it makes logical sense to you. Maybe it is a statement that is true by itself. No matter how good it looks to you, if it is not doing the job that you're expected to do, that's not your answer. The GMAT and every multiple choice exam is an exam of elimination. It sometimes is difficult for us to figure out if a particular option is the answer or not. But if you know for sure that one option is not the answer, in this way you can eliminate 4 options. The one that you're left with, even if you're not sure if that's your answer, that has to be your answer. So elimination is your friend. Your focus needs to be, hey, what is the reason for me to eliminate a particular option? All right. Keeping these points in mind and keeping the logic that we just spoke about a while, let's fall back on some official questions. Let's look at a few official questions, and keeping these points in mind, let's try and see if we can strengthen the argument that has been presented to us. All right, I hope everybody's ready. If you can, please go ahead and grab a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper, because it's a great idea as you practice to try and emulate the GMAT setting as much as it's possible. When you're taking the exam, you will be given a scratch pad. If you have one of those laminated sheet scratch pads, great. If not, pencil and pen will do. Get into the habit of doing some amount of writing down so that it simplifies the whole process. Everybody, I hope we can start. I hope you have your paper and pencil with you. Here is your first question. 2 minutes. Time starts now. Time's up. I hope all of you have been able to figure out the answer. Let's discuss. Let's break down the argument as always. Let's not directly go to the options. As I said, it's a great idea to simplify the option as much as you can and take it from there. It's a great idea also to read the question stem first. Yes, we are having a session where we're talking about strengthening the argument. But let's, as a habit, always get to reading the question stem first, which are the following, if true, most strongly supports the restorer's hypothesis. Now, this word support, I just want to point out, usually implies that you have a strengthen the argument question in hand. But I also want to point out that depending on the way in which the question stem has been worded, it can also be an inference question. So this is for another prepathon. But the word support can be a strengthen the argument or an inference the argument question. Depends on the way in which the question has been worded. Let's have a look, okay? Which of the following strongly supports the restorer's hypothesis, which means there is some hypothesis. One of these options supports or strengthens the argument. All right. Now, had it been an inference question, the wordings would be the question stem would be worded slightly differently. But if your question stem is saying that one of the options is supporting, you know it's a strengthen the argument question. All right. Let's have a look at the argument. Let's see what's being said. The restorer, just simplified version of this is the restorers think that the gesso layer causes Renaissance oil paintings to deteriorate due to the climatic changes. Okay. So it says that the restorers therefore hypothesize that it is a layer of material called gesso, which is under the paint that causes deterioration. So that is what the hypothesis is. We are expected to support this hypothesis, which means we are expected to find an option that shows us that yes, it is the gesso that causes the deterioration. Every option I look at, I'm going to ask myself, does this option help me show that gesso causes the deterioration? If it doesn't do that, that is not my answer, as simple as that. Let's have a look. Renaissance oil paintings with a thin layer of gesso are less likely to show deterioration in response to climatic change than those with a thicker layer. Okay, so they're saying if it's a thin layer, less deterioration. If it's a thick layer, more deterioration. Okay. So this seems to tell me exactly what the hypothesis is saying. If a thinner gesso layer leads to less deterioration, it shows that the thickness of the gesso affects how the painting is reacting to climatic changes. And this is exactly what the argument is trying to prove. But I'm not going to fall in love with this option and decide this is my answer. This is a mistake several students tend to make. They see an option, they like it, and they've decided that's the answer. Let's not do that. Let's hold on to this option. It's a good one, but I'm going to make sure all the others can be eliminated. Only and only then will I decide that this is the answer. Let me look at the others. Option B says Renaissance oil paintings are often painted on wooden panels which swell when humidity increases and contracts when it declines. Now, see, maybe you are a painting enthusiast, or maybe you realize that hey, wood tends to swell when there is humidity and contract when it declines. You know, when it's a rainy season and you can't close the door, you know that's what's happening. So this by itself may make sense to you on a commonsensical level, but you're going to ask yourself, okay, fine, this information is there, but does this help me show that gesso causes deterioration? Does this option even mention gesso? It doesn't. So since it doesn't connect to the gesso layer at all and it's shifting focus to a different factor entirely, this is not my answer. This might make logical sense. It might even be true as a fact, but I don't care. That's not relevant. Option C says oil paint expands and contracts readily in response to changes in temperature, but it absorbs. Once again, this might be saying something that might be factually true. But is this telling me anything that helps me show that gesso causes deterioration? Totally out of scope. This is not my answer either. D says an especially hard and non-absorbent type of gesso. Fine. At least this option is talking about gesso, if nothing else. This one doesn't even talk about gesso. An especially hard and non-absorbent type of gesso was the raw material for moldings on the frames of Renaissance oil paintings. Now, yes, it's talking about gesso, but I'm not interested in any particular type. Fine. Even if it's talking about a particular type, this is talking about the molding on the frames. We are talking about the paintings itself. So what has been applied on the molding of the frames does not help me show that gesso causes deterioration of the painting. That's my focus, right? So this is tricky because you can see Renaissance oil paintings, but if you miss the fact that you're talking about the frames, you might end up choosing these out. He says gesso layers applied by Renaissance painters typically consisted of a coarse base layer, blah, 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 blah. Yes, it's talking about gesso layers, but this is actually a description of how the gesso was applied. It doesn't link the gesso layer to the deterioration. So it's just more background information. So, this is just telling me about how it is they typically consist of a coarse base layer onto which several layers were applied. This is not telling me that the gesso brought about the deterioration. That is what option A is doing. My answer is option B. The key takeaway for any question that we look at where strengthen the argument is concerned, you're asking yourself, does this help me show that gesso causes deterioration? A does it, the others don't. Now, I also want to briefly comment on how is it that we tackle these kind of questions and how is it that we can improve our time. Okay. I know that my focus is clearly about gesso causing deterioration of the painting. This one doesn't talk about gesso. This one doesn't talk about gesso. Fine, this talks about gesso. This talks about gesso. This talks about gesso. I know that I should be able to eliminate two options within 10 seconds of solving. Fine, 15. But the idea is you want to scroll down and you want to look at the options presented to you and get rid of those options quickly. The ones that are not your answer, get rid of immediately. I now know I'm going to spend a chunk of my time looking at the three options that are probably the answer. Our aim is to get, there are usually two, if not three options you can get rid of immediately. Try and focus on those so that your majority of your time is focused on the ones that could be the answer. Let's look at one more. Again, 2 minutes. Time starts now. Same process, same focus on what your conclusion is saying and which option helps you show that whatever has been presented is probably true. All right, time's up. What do you think is the answer for this one? I know there are a few options that are a little tricky, and there are quite a few students who feel, it's either this or that. I'm stuck between, many students are stuck between two options, some of them stuck between three. So what do you think is the answer? Give it a go. Just try and think. Meanwhile, Let's try and break down what the question stem is saying. Let's try and understand what the argument itself is present. Let's look at the question stem. Which of the following, if true? Now, please notice that strengthen the argument, weaken the argument. These questions will have this if true mention. What this means is all of these are assumptions that they're sending your way. You have to assume that it is true. Okay, so you don't have to figure out is it true or not. Just assume that it's true, because these are all outside scenarios that they're presenting that if applied would strengthen or weaken the other. So you have this always mentioned. Don't let it bother you. Just assume that whatever is being said is true. Which of the following best supports a projection that the spinach growing facility near Chicago will be profitable? Now, what you'll notice, yet another trend that you see often, is in this particular case, you have your conclusion mentioned over here. Now, this is also another advantage of reading your question stem first. Because now let's just look at the argument itself. If you look at the entire argument, you will realize that there is no conclusion as such. And a lot of students, if they see, hey, where's the conclusion? What am I supposed to do? This realization that the argument doesn't have a conclusion could end up causing a lot of stress. So if I've read the question stem first, I know it is a strength in the argument, and I know here is my conclusion. I don't have to worry. My conclusion is that this facility, this factory that they're talking about, will be profitable. I need to find an option that shows me that, hey, this factory is going to be profitable. What is the argument saying? The argument is saying that there is this factory which grows where these people are growing spinach. Now, you might not know what hydroponic is. It's okay, not important. You know that it's spinach being grown, all right? The spinach is being grown in a controlled environment, but it's a higher cost. It says here that expenses, especially for electricity, are high. However, the spinach produced costs 4 times as much as the washed Californian field spinach that is commonly sold. Now, what they're telling us is that it's very, very expensive. And they're still saying that it's going to be profitable. I need to find an option that says that in spite of it being expensive, this particular facility is going to be profitable. Let's look at each option and come back to the what it is that we're expected to do and see if it works or not. The first one, once the operators of the facility are experienced, they will be able to cut operating expenses by about 25%. Now, a lot of people end up choosing this option because they think that if the cost has reduced, this means the profit will go up. Not necessarily. Even in school, we've learned about cost price and selling price and profit and things like that. So, this is a very basic assumption that people make, that if the cost goes down, the profit will go up. It may be so, but I can't say for sure. As a matter of fact, this particular kind of a relationship you will also see in several reading comprehension passages, where the author might have presented in some way that the expenses have gone down, but this does not, you cannot necessarily say that this will tell me that the profits will go up. Very tempting. A lot of people tend to choose it, but this is not something I can say for sure. Option B says there is virtually no scope for any further reduction in the cost per pound for California field spinach. Now, this option is, what this is telling me is, hey, look, this is my competition, right? This is hydroponic spinach, is the spinach we are talking about. The field spinach is the competition for the hydroponic guys. They're saying, look, there's no possible, you can't, it's limiting the competition. I can't possibly have any more competition because they're already selling it at the lowest point. But is this information going to help me show that the hydroponic spinach factory is going to be profitable? No, it doesn't help me. It's not a strong support in any way. Okay, so this is also out. Option C says, unlike washed field spinach, the hydroponically grown spinach is untainted by any pesticide or herbicide and thus will sell at exceptionally high prices. Look at these kind of qualifiers. They're saying not just high prices, but really, really high prices to such customers as health food restaurants. Now, this looks really good. Okay, I'm going to hold on to this because this is telling me that, hey, look, it's not just high prices, but you can sell it at a really high price because these health food restaurants, they want produce that is not affected by pesticides or herbicides. That's, very organic. So if it is an organic product, I could possibly charge an exceptionally high price and get high profit. C looks good. D says, since spinach is a crop that ships relatively well, which means I can send it by cargo, it can be transported to other places. The market for the hydroponically grown spinach is no more limited to the Chicago area. So they're saying, hey, look, it's not just in Chicago. Now I can sell it in other places around Chicago also because I can happily transport this and it's not going to be a problem. Now, this is also a option a lot of people end up choosing. They say, hey, look, if I can sell it in more places, my profits are going to go up. But again, this is a trap. Now, just because my market size has increased, does it necessarily mean that people are going to buy more and there are going to be greater profits? No, I can't say that. Also, I also have the shipping cost to consider. So even if I ship it somewhere, and even if I have people buying it, I also have a shipping cost to consider. All of this is telling me that I need not necessarily have a profit because I have to consider shipping costs. And just because my market has increased doesn't necessarily mean the number of products bought will increase. So no, I can't say this for sure. Really good trap, but no. Option A is talking about a second hydroponic facility being built in Canada. The question stem is telling me about this finish going facility near Chicago. This is one option that I can immediately eliminate. I agree that the others tend to be take a little more thinking through, but an option like the one that's given in option E, which is talking about completely a different scope, I can immediately eliminate. What I'm left with is option C. All the others seem to have some problem or the other. Yes, some of them look really tempting, where they're telling me that the cost has reduced or they're telling me that the market has increased. But the only one that tells me that I will see a profit is the option that tells me I can sell at an exceptionally high price. C is my answer. All right, let's have a look at one more. Okay, here we are. Okay, let's have a look at this from scratch. I just realized that we need to discuss this again. Okay. Now, the question stem is saying which of the following, if true, most strongly supports the pharmaceutical industry's argument against the challenges made above. That means there is some argument that has been presented by the pharmaceutical industry, and there is some challenge that has been made. Okay, the pharmaceutical industry argues that. Now, here the pharmaceuticals argument or its conclusion has been presented in the beginning itself. It says because new drugs will not be developed unless heavy development costs can be recouped, the current 20 years of protection provided should be extended in the case of newly developed drugs. Here is the pharmaceutical company's argument. This is the claim that they're making, that the 20-year protection needs to be extended in the case of newly developed drugs. There is a challenge. However, in other industries, new product development continues despite high development cost, so the extension is unnecessary. So we are looking for an option that helps us show that, hey, what the pharmaceutical company is saying is correct. It is supporting the pharmaceutical industry's argument against the challenge that has been made. Essentially, I need to find a reason why the pharma company situation is different from the others and why they do need longer patents, even though the other industries do. Right. Let's look at each option. Option A says no industries other than the pharmaceutical industry have asked for an extension of the 20-year limit. So just because other industries have not asked for an extension doesn't mean that what the pharmaceutical company is asking for is correct, right? I mean, let them not have asked. Now, what is happening in option A is the option A is merely stating that no other industry has asked for extension. But this doesn't help me show that yes, the pharma industry's patent laws should be extended. A is out. B is saying the clinical trial of new drugs, which occur after the patent is granted and before the new drug can be marketed, often now take as long as 10 years. Oh my, complex. Let's look at it again. The clinical trials, let's suppose, which happens after the patent is granted. Let's suppose the patent is granted over here, okay? And the clinical trials start after this, okay? And which occur after the patent is granted and before the new drug can be marketed, often take as long as 10 years. So let's suppose this is where the marketing happens. So this takes 10 years. Just the trials take 10 years, which means they have 10 more years of patent protection. The GMAT is expecting you to know what patent protection means, which means if you have a patent protected drug, nobody else can sell that same drug but you. So what they're saying is the clinical trial takes 10 years, which means it's just 10 years of protection that they have. 10 years have been wasted in clinical trials and they only have 10 years of protection to get any money and they need to recoup it in later sales. Only then will they be able to develop it. So this tells me that these guys are only getting 10 years to actually make any money. This says, hey, this is not enough. And you can't have new drugs unless you have these developmental costs that are recouped in later sales. And I only have 10 years to do that. This is giving me enough reason to say, hey, maybe these guys need more patent protection. B looks good. I'm going to hold on. Option C is saying there are several industries in which the ratio of research and development cost to revenues is higher than it is in the pharmaceutical industry. See, this is comparing the R&D cost ratio and the research and development costs in different industries, which is not relevant to why the pharma industry needs extended. Okay. So just because it might be true for other industries, it's not necessarily true for the pharmaceutical industry. C is out. D says, an existing patent for a drug does not legally prevent pharmaceutical companies from bringing to market alternative drugs provided they're sufficiently dissimilar to the patented drug. See, this is a typical kind of answer option that the test setters will give you. You know that you have to do some thinking and figuring out what's happening. Look, I'm going to hold on to this. Let me see if I can eliminate as many options as I can. I'll come back to this. Option E says, much recent industrial innovation has occurred in products, for example, in the computer and electronics industries, for which patent protection is often very ineffective. So this is talking about an alternate thing already. This is not related to drug. This is not related to patent duration or the need for extension. They're saying that industrial innovation has occurred for which patent protection is often. This is just telling me that in other industries, patent protection is ineffective. But this doesn't help me say that the patent protection for the pharmaceutical industries need to be extended. This is out. It's either B or D. Let's try and break down D a little more. An existing patent of a drug does not legally prevent pharmaceutical companies from bringing to market an alternate drug. So let's suppose there is company A and there is company B. Let's suppose company A has a particular drug. Okay. Just because this drug is patent protected, it doesn't stop, it doesn't prevent pharmaceutical companies from bringing to market alternate drugs. So I can bring out another drug that is similar to this, as long as it is dissimilar enough, as long as this is not infringing my patent rights, I can very well bring it out. So the only thing option D is saying that another company can bring out a product that is reasonably similar to a patent protected drug. Okay, now this is talking about bringing alternate drugs to the market. Yeah, this might be true. Yes, this guy can bring out a product that's fairly similar, but how does this help me show that the patent protection needs to be extended? It doesn't really. So the only thing that is happening is that they're saying that, hey, at the most, you can say that, company B is going to be eating into the profits of company A because theirs is similar. That's the most that you can say. But this is telling me nothing about extending of the patent period. D looks good. If you overthink it, D looks good. But in the end, it is B that works because B is telling me that, hey, look, I don't get enough time to recoup in later developmental costs in later sales. And I need that if I want to develop the drugs. So since this is a requirement, I need more time to sell, such that nobody else can sell, only I can sell and I can make profits. So it is only option B that tells me that yes, the patent time protection needs to be extended. Let's try one more. Here we are. 2 minutes. Time starts now. All right, time's up. Let's have a look at what's being said. Which of the following, if true, most strongly supports the prediction that the plan will succeed? Once again, similar pattern that we've just seen. There is a prediction, as I've mentioned in the earlier sessions, prediction, conclusion, claim, argument, hypothesis, all of these are synonyms for conclusion. Okay. So they're telling us that there is some prediction and we are looking for an option that will tell us that this particular plan, some plan will succeed. So now we need to find out what is that plan. That's what the argument is going to tell us. The plan is that they are going to, there is a new plant variety of sweet potato that is rich in beta carotene. And they are in one region, the agriculturists are attempting to improve nutrition. And the plan has good chances of success. What is this plan? The plan is to introduce this particular uh, plant, this new variety that is rich in beta carotene. Okay. So now the new sweet potato variety is rich in beta carotene and could help solve the vitamin A deficiency. So we need to find an option that says, hey, this plan to introduce a sweet potato and solve the vitamin A deficiency problem will succeed. Let's see which one of the options is going to do that for us. Option A says, the growing conditions required by the varieties of sweet potato currently cultivated in the region are conditions in which this particular SPK, this particular sweet potato can flourish. So they're saying the growing conditions that are presently there will help this plant flourish. So if this plant SPK grows well under the same conditions as the existing varieties, it's more likely to be adopted. So it's not going to be difficult to raise this because sweet potatoes anyway being grown in these same conditions. So if this particular potato is also grown there, it's more likely that this particular plant will be adopted. This is a strong indicator of success. I don't know. Let me hold on to this. Option B says, the flesh of SPK differs from that of currently cultivated sweet potatoes in color and texture, so that traditional food would look somewhat different when prepared. Now I know that South America, these people are, they use sweet potato and they're probably using sweet potato to make these very traditional dishes. And now what this option is saying is that once you use this particular kind of sweet potato, these traditional dishes that you make don't look like or taste like the traditional dishes anymore. Now, there's a particular, let's suppose the traditional dishes are yellow in color, and let's suppose it's a smooth texture, hypothetically speaking. And if I go and use SPK, suddenly the color of the dish that I make is orange and it's very, let's say it's very gritty. So the traditional food that I'm used to eating in a particular form doesn't look like it anymore. This reduces the chances of people adopting this in their diet. And then if they don't adopt it in their diet, they will not be able to, improve their vitamin A level. The whole plan goes for the toss. Option B is probably at the most weakening this argument. Yet another very commonly seen pattern. In a strengthen the argument question, almost always there will be at least one option that weakens the argument and vice versa. In a weaken the argument question, there'll always be almost always be an option that strengthens the argument. This one is weakening. This is out. Option C says there are no other varieties of sweet potato that are significantly richer in beta carotene than SPK. Now, this option, tends to is very tempting. A lot of people say, "Hey, look, there is no other variety that has a better, that is richer than beta carotene like this particular SPK does." So this is very tempting and makes you feel that this is definitely something that's good for you. But by highlighting that there is no other sweet potato that is richer in beta carotene, it doesn't necessarily mean that the people of that area will adopt this and the plan will be. See, right now, the sweet potato that they're using is not at all having any, they're telling us that it's not very rich in beta carotene in contrast to this. So right now, the plan that they're having is not rich at all. Just because this one is going to be very, very, there is no other sweet potato that is higher, doesn't necessarily mean that people will adopt. They could, but we can't really say for sure. So no, this one is out. Option D says, the varieties of sweet potato currently cultivated in the region contain some important nutrients that are lacking in SPK. Okay, yet another really tempting option. Option D is telling me that, hey, there are some nutrients, let's say XYZ nutrient, that the varieties of sweet potato have some of these XYZ nutrients. But SPK doesn't have. Okay. Now, this particular option is focusing on what SPK doesn't have. It is supposed to, I am interested in talking about what SPK does have. It has it has the ability to, give you more beta carotene and convert, body converts into vitamin E, etc., etc. Highlighting what SPK doesn't have is not really helping us. It doesn't directly address whether SPK will succeed in the region or not. Now, a lot of people choose D, sorry, option D, thinking that, hey, it doesn't have this, so, it has more of whatever else, and they end up choosing this. But the focus is that just because it doesn't have a particular nutrient that the other sweet potatoes have, doesn't tell me the plant will be a success. This is probably telling me that it will not be a success, right? Because there are some nutrients that are needed, this guy doesn't have. So D is actually weakening the argument again here, just like this one is weakening the argument. Sorry, this one is weakening the argument. Option E says there are other vegetables currently. Now, this is a usual, very, very commonly seen pattern. There are other vegetables currently grown in the region that contain more beta carotene than the currently cultivated varieties of sweet potato do. Okay, there might be other vegetables that have more beta carotene. This might be doing really well. But I mean, I am looking for something that shows that uh, this particular product will succeed. There is nothing that's helping me. I'm looking for something that shows that this particular product will be a success. And now what's happening in option E is that this is just telling me, hey, if it's beta carotene that you want, there are other vegetables. This is telling me that probably people won't even bother with this because they already have other vegetables. This is also not helping me show that SPK or the adoption of SPK will be a success. The only one that tells me, hey, look, this particular X feature will help the adoption, be a success is this one mentioned in A, where it's saying, hey, it's, the growing conditions will help this plant flourish. So if they adopt this and they try to grow this, it'll grow well. This is the only option that tells me that the adoption will be a success. The others don't. What we've looked at today is fairly to the point, simple kind of questions. The focus of today's session was to point out that if we are very clear about what we're looking for, it becomes a little easier for us to eliminate options that don't work, that don't do the job. This is the one thing that does make strengthen the argument questions a tad bit easier because you're only focusing on an option that does or say or is showing that whatever has been concluded is probably true. Okay, so we've understood the logic behind strengthen the argument questions. We've understood the strategy we need to follow where we're singularly focused on the claim or the conclusion that has been presented. And we have solved some strengthen the argument questions under the pressure of time. And we've also identified some typical patterns and traps that we can add to our videos. What I'm hoping to do is to look at more such questions, more such patterns as we progress, as the weeks progress. We're going to be looking at more such videos where the idea is to focus on the logic that has been presented. And I do hope all of you will join me when I look at these various kinds of traps and patterns and various critical reasoning questions. That's it for me. Thank you, everybody. I hope, all of you will give me more feedback on the chat and let me know what are the other question types that you'd like me to explore. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.